this ongoing series where right now what we are looking at is my little book called Don't Try to Stop Stuttering, Replace It. And so in just a couple of minutes, we're going to get started. Right now, I'm just going to test out the audio just to make sure that it's working, and then we'll jump right in. So don't worry if you are joining us at 12:30 our time, and if you see me speaking already, this is automatically recorded and you can watch it um, almost immediately after the broadcast has ended. But while we wait for just a minute or two, just wanted to give you some updates on what's been happening. Some very exciting things have been happening with regards to our mobile applications. As you know, we currently have the iPhone application. You can use it on iPads as well. It looks better on the iPad mini. If you use it on a larger iPad, then you probably need to change the dimensions of it to make it a little smaller. We are developing the Android app. So within a month, more likely a month and a half or so, we should have the Android application out. Now, one thing I want to tell you, when you're using this app, it is set up for streaming video and audio. So if you have, or if you live in a country where your connection is maybe not as strong as someplace else, it is going to be difficult for you to watch the videos. You probably can listen to the audio because of the fact that the file size is smaller, so it doesn't take quite as long to stream that. But that is one of the issues, and at some point in the future, I can't tell you when, because it's going to take some major development to redevelop the whole back end and all of that, so that you can actually download. So once you install the app, it will download the videos and the audio, the content, onto your application. But that's a project for the future. For now, though, you will need to stream the video and the audio. So what I would suggest is if you're having difficulty streaming the video, for most all of the programs, there's an audio version of it, and you should be able to stream that okay. The other thing that I probably will be doing is offering folks an option for a one-time fee, and with this option you would be able to access the app and the online course, and it'll be a lifetime one-time fee, and you can get everything. So that if you would like to watch or listen to it or use the functionality of the app, you can do that, but you can also download whichever audio and video from the Pro 90D course that you like. So I'll probably be making that offer pretty soon. It'll be just a one-time lifetime fee to get both things, the online course and full access to the app. So be looking for that. So let's get started with today's lesson, with today's session. Today, we're going to be looking at really what is a 5-part system, but I've added a couple of extra things to it, so it turns out to be 7. But the core of the system is actually 5 parts. It's actually 5. So if you see 5 or 7 or 6, the core is 5, but I've added a couple. So let's take a look at this system for helping you say what you want to say when you want to say it. Now remember, what I do is more than, and it's beyond just helping you to not stutter. In fact, that's not even the focus at all. I realize that all of my promotional material says how to stop stuttering. That's because that's what people are looking for. What I'm doing is I'm giving you something more. I'm giving you something better. I'm actually helping you become an excellent speaker, a superior speaker, if you follow the program. If you take shortcuts and you don't do some of the things that I'm asking you to do, then you're probably not going to get the results. And I have too many people who follow it and get the results that I promote. I have people who actually go to Toastmasters and either do very well or win first prize. Their first time out, they win, or they just do very well. I have people who are getting promotions, who have gotten promotions while they're working with me and are continuing to be promoted. And I'm thinking of at least 2 people right now off the top of my head. If I thought harder, I could think of more of my clients who, in less than 6 months' time, their speech is turned around. And these are not people who stutter moderately. I'm talking about these are people who have had some severe stammering issues. There are some who have moderate issues, but moderate only in that when you and I talk to them in certain situations, you might not be able to tell, but when they get in high pressure situations, then it becomes pretty severe, okay? Then I have people where if you talk to them at any time, you can see that they stutter. So it ranges. Just because it's moderate sometimes doesn't mean it's not severe other times. And all of these people who follow the system exactly as I lay it out are getting tremendous results. Now, I want to caution you because not only do you need to follow the system, but you have to be patient. So if you're coming to me or you're coming to this approach and you're like, I have this amount of time and I need to knock this out, keep right on going. Just go find another system because this isn't going to work. You have to be in this for the long term. You have to be patient with yourself. You may very well get dramatic results. In fact, within 90 days, you will get dramatic results, but you're not going to be at the place where you're like, okay, I don't stutter anymore, right? It's just gone. Now, can that happen? Does that happen? Sure. But more than likely, it's going to take longer than that to get you to the place where you pretty much don't stutter anymore. Why do I say pretty much? Because everyone stutters or stammers or stumbles over their words. So who are we to think that we're not going to stutter or stammer sometimes over our words, right? It's going to happen. It may come from different places, but it's going to happen. The difference is that it no longer impacts you. You no longer define yourself as a person who stutters. Your speech has now become an asset rather than a liability. What do I mean by that? I mean that before, your speech may have kept you from getting promotions, from getting jobs. Just talked to a gentleman just the other day who lost his job as a result of his speech. It may keep you from being as social as you would like to be. And what will happen is your speech will then go from preventing you, from impeding you from doing those things, to actually becoming one of your greatest assets. You will get jobs because you speak so well. You will get opportunities because you speak so well. Your relationships will be better because you're able to express yourself very well. These are not empty promises. I'm watching people do it. I can help you do this if you follow the system. So, that being said, let's get into this. I'm going to give you 7 steps today, okay? And they're right inside the little book here. So, just so that I don't miss anything, I'm going to make sure that we follow these 7 steps. And the first one is for you to pick a model. Now, someone says, well, what if I can't find a model? You have to find a model. Sure, you can create your own speaking style, but the intensity of the work that you have to do is such that you're more than likely not going to be able to improve your speech to the level that you could if you find someone and just model them. In fact, if you model someone, you could almost, and I've seen people, instantaneously transform their speech. Not in 2 months, 3 months, instantaneously transform their speech. And if they continue to model, they continue to transform their speech, and it becomes a part of who they are. So the first step is to what? Pick a model. Now, it doesn't matter what your language is. Many of my clients, in fact, all of my initial clients, English was their second language. They were from other countries, and they all modeled me. Why did they model me? Because they have access to me, right? They have access to my videos, to my audio. The specific skills that I teach, proactive speaking skills, articulating, extending, inflecting, finishing, using your body, all those skills you see me demonstrate. I don't tell them to model me because I'm the best speaker in the world, because I don't necessarily think that I am the best speaker in the world. I think I'm okay. I think I'm good. I can hold my own, but I'm sure there are other speakers that are more dynamic or better than I am, and that's okay. But I tell them to model me because they have access. Some people may not want to model me. They may not like the way I speak. Can they still use the system? Yes. But you need to find a model that you have access to, right? You need to find a model that you have access to their videos and their audio. You don't have to have access to them personally necessarily. You do need to have access to their content, right? Audio and video, so that you can model them, so that you can study them. So the first step is to pick a model. You got to do that right off. And one of the reasons is that if you model someone, it helps you, now listen, it helps you forget about yourself and think about how that other person would speak, how that other person does speak. Give you a great example. I have a client right now. She's a female. She's been modeling me. And she says what she does when she has to do a presentation or do a meeting or whatever she's doing, she thinks about her model and says, how would my model speak in this situation? How would my model respond? How does my model use his hands? How does my model speak? So she just pictures her model and she begins to speak as if she were her model. This is exactly what I did. It's exactly what I did. And it's almost miraculous. It's almost miraculous in how it works. Because what has to happen as you're going through this process, we talk about you creating a new speaking style, but what has to happen is you have to change a very important part of your identity, right? That is who you think you are and how you think you speak. A part of your identity now may be identifying yourself as a person who stutters or you get stuck sometime or whatever. So we have to change that. And the fastest way to change that is to almost take on the identity of someone who doesn't stutter. And I don't mean taking on their identity as walking around acting like someone else all the time. I mean in terms of speaking, okay? This is the reason why, and you've heard me say this before, this is one of the reasons why. Actors, when they act, they don't what? They don't stutter. Because they're taking on another persona, another identity, if you will. That identity doesn't stutter. We're doing the same thing. I'm asking you to take on another identity, another persona for speaking. Whenever you speak, not just when you present, but when you're conversing, take on this other persona. You may have to create a persona for answering the phone. Another way that you speak when you answer the phone, because I know phones are difficult for many of you. When you read, right, you want to read dramatically. So you take on another. When you present, you have another persona, right? And so you have these different personas, these different identities, if you will, for how you're going to read, how you're going to speak on the phone, how you're going to interview. And it's not strange. It's all you. When someone looks at you, they're going to see you. But in your mind, you're taking on this different persona that's more confident, that speaks smoother and more fluently and easier, okay? Trust me on this, this works. Simple, I don't want to do that, not going to work for you, okay? Had someone contact me yesterday, and I really felt bad. The person bought the Pro 90D program, I think in April, and I guess they had been trying it. This is just May now, so it hasn't been that long. And they've been trying to use the new speaking style, and they said their friends were laughing at them. So they wanted a refund. Immediately gave them a refund, wrote them back and said, hey, very sorry about that, but what's funnier, you using a new speaking style and learning to adjust it, right, so that maybe it might start out feeling kind of strange. We'll talk about this in a few minutes. But then eventually you kind of figure out how to make it feel and sound a little more natural. But what's funnier, using a new speaking style or stuttering? What's more strange? So I felt kind of bad. I think that that person eventually will either find another system that works for them, or maybe one day they'll figure out that, okay, I just need to jump in and do this and make it work for me. So find a model or pick a model. That's the first one. Step 2, pattern yourself after your model. So we've kind of already talked about that, right? You pattern yourself after your model. So how do you do that? You have to spend time watching your model, right? Watching their videos, listening to their audio. When I did this, I patterned myself after a guy named Brian Tracy. Now, his speaking style is different now than what it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And my style is now different from his. But I patterned myself. So I actually used a lot of his audio, right? Because we didn't have, I didn't have video on the computer. I didn't even have a computer back then, so I wasn't watching a lot of his video. I was able to get a hold of some of his videos, and I studied those videos, but I mainly listened to him. So I actually learned to model and pattern myself after him using audio primarily and video secondarily. So you can do it without video, but there are some things that you do need to pattern yourself after with regards to video. That is, how does the person move? How do they hold their head? What are their facial expressions? How do they articulate? How do they use their hands? Okay, and again, because I'm confined by the space, you're not going to see me moving a lot. But if we were live, I would be moving. So how does that person move when they're speaking? You're going to want to study those things, right? Study them and then practice them, literally copy. One of the more difficult things to copy is a person's hand movements, because if you're not used to using your hands, it may feel kind of awkward. But again, I've asked people, okay, just develop a new hand movement vocabulary. Study my hand movements and then practice them. And I've seen people do extremely well. And people have said, when I use my hands, it triggers my new speaking style. I speak a lot better when I use my hands. So rather than being stiff like this, right, then you want to loosen up a little. Now, I'm not talking about being loose like this, but I'm just talking about using your hands, using your body in this sense, right? We've talked about that before too. So pattern yourself. How do you do that? You have to watch. You have to listen to your model. You're probably going to watch and listen to this person so much that you can see them and hear them in your mind, right? And that's when you know it's working, because what you've done is you've imprinted, you've impressed their image, their style in your brain, literally, through your eyes, through your ears, right? You're watching the image, you're listening to the sound, and it literally is being recorded in your brain. And that's the way that you're able to then recall when you're speaking. How does my model speak? How does my model move? How does my model sound? Right? So one way is by watching and listening. Another way is by practicing. So let's take a look at the third step. The third step is to prepare presentations to help you master your model's speaking style. So what was the first step? The first step was to what? Pick a model. I'm going to write these steps down. Hopefully you have the book. If not, I'm going to make sure that you get that. But you pick a model. Step 2 is what? Pattern yourself after your model. How do you do that? You watch, listen, study. 3, prepare presentations to help you master your model's speaking style. Why presentations? Right? So people say, well, why do I have to do presentations? Because presentations are the fastest and the easiest way for you to master a new speaking style. You're in control, right? There's no dialogue there. Now, when I present live, I present interactively. So I do interact with the audience almost 99% of the time. No matter how large the audience is, I'm going to find a way to interact. But when you first start, and generally speaking, when you present, especially if you're by yourself, you're going to be in total control over your speech. There's no starting or stopping. And when you memorize something, then you know what you're going to say. And I know what people are thinking. Well, yeah, that's easy to do, but then how do I transfer it to my conversation? We'll talk about that. So you you prepare presentations to help you master your model's speaking style. What I do is I actually have people go ahead and start memorizing, and I usually use the 21 steps. Start memorizing step 1, 30 seconds at a time, and do what I call micro model. I have them try to model me as exactly as possible. The words, the rhythm, the inflections, everything. And it's difficult at first. It's time consuming. It can be frustrating, but it's worth it because it's that work, it's that time, it's that study that forms those new connections in your brain that creates that new speaking style. Does that make sense? So that's why preparing the presentations is so important, because if you don't do that, you don't develop the connections. If you don't develop the connections, you're not creating a new speaking style. And therefore, if you just try to do it when you need it, it fails you eventually, or it doesn't work all the time. People says it's not working. I try to do it here. It's because you're not spending the time creating the connections by preparing the presentations and practicing them over and over. Now, that takes us to another question, which I am going to answer, is that, okay, what if you've been doing that and now your presentations are great, but your conversations are still bad? Once again, I'm saying that because I know that many of you are thinking that, and I am going to address that because that's a major, major issue. It's a major challenge. So we're going to address that. So prepare presentations. How do you do that? You memorize the content, and then you create the presentation where it's already created, so you just memorize it. What I used to do is to take his presentations, Brian Tracy, and make them my own. So I would modify them and change them and make them my own, and then practice them, and then I would go out and present them. And that's our next step, number 4. You practice these presentations in private. So first, you study them, you prepare it, then you practice it by yourself. Why by yourself? You do it by yourself because the average person doesn't stutter by themselves. Some people do. Some people do. I realize that. But many people don't. When they're by themselves, they can be more relaxed, they can be more comfortable. And even if they initially get stuck or speak in a very choppy manner by themselves, they are more, it's easier for them to overcome that by themselves. Okay? It's easier. Another technique that we use is we can drop down to a whisper, right? So if using your voice even by yourself and you're still choppy and stuff, drop down to a whisper, just totally relax, no volume, practice presentation of whisper, gradually raise your volume, okay? I've had to do that before with clients and it's worked very well. So number 4, practice presentations in private. Again, it's a system. Systematically, we're building your confidence, building your new speaking style. Can't skip these. Number 5, present the presentations in public under pressure. Now, we can break this up into a couple of sub-steps. 1, present it to family and friends. Someone says, I don't have any family and friends. Then you have to find some. You got to find somebody, because if you just do it by yourself, it doesn't present the same kind of situation that contains the stressors that would cause you or that would cause stuttering to present itself, right? So there's that, I'm in front of someone, and this is where I generally stutter. So you have to put yourself in that situation. And the first time, and the first few times or several times, it might be bad. But you keep doing it, and maybe you start out with just 30 seconds of it, or 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I'm just going to present a few seconds of this. Maybe you have a minute memorized, but you just start out presenting a few seconds of it to gradually acclimate yourself, right? Okay, so that's another strategy. Now, so you have an inner circle, family and friends. Then you go out and you start finding other people. Now, those of you that are in school or working where you have to present anyway, then you're in a perfect situation because you can just go out and still practice these presentations, but then you have your own that you need to prepare for, and you just use the same style. You also, now listen to this. This is an extra for you. If you're doing presentations for work, you don't want to go in unprepared, right? You want to internalize your presentation. It's okay to have notes, okay to have slides, but internalize it so that you can focus on the style. Your brain is able to focus on the style and how you're going to connect the message with the end user, with your audience. Your brain is able to do all of that kind of simultaneously. Eventually, you won't have to really think about your style. It'll just be there. But initially, you will need to focus on using your style. And believe it or not, you can focus on that and on the content. It really does work. Because, now watch this. When you speak with a rhythm, when you speak proactively, and you have a rhythm, and you're articulating, and you're inflecting, and extending your words, and pausing, and all those things, guess what happens? You're more relaxed. You can actually begin to think more clearly. So your presentations are clearer when you're focusing, initially, when you're focusing on your style. Someone says, well, I can't think of all these things. Yes, you can. You can think of your model, right? So some people, they don't think of, okay, I got to articulate, I got to inflect this. How does my model speak? Let me speak like my model. And if you've been practicing by yourself, then when you tell yourself, let me speak like my model, it will trigger all of those skills because you've been practicing. Your body already knows what to do. You're just telling it, speak like my model, and your body does it. Okay? If you haven't been practicing and you say, speak like my model or articulate, then your body might be able to do it sometimes, but it just doesn't have the memory to do it because you haven't been practicing. Okay? So present the presentations in public under pressure. You have to do that. Someone says, well, it's embarrassing. Well, stuttering is embarrassing, right? So if you want to get over that, you're going to have to go through this period where it's going to be embarrassing. But guess what? Within a relatively short period of time, you're going to figure out a way to work through that. You're going to start speaking more smoothly as you work through this. If you've been training yourself, you're going to have the tools, you're going to have the skills. You're just going to have to learn to use them under pressure. Under pressure. Okay. Step 6. You push yourself to use a modified version of your presentation in your daily conversation. So here's the part where I'm going to get into briefly. And I know we're running a little over, and I probably will go a little over today because I really want to cover this. This is the part where you are going to use your new speaking style in conversation. So how do you do that? How do you do that? Here's how you do it. If you've been practicing your presentation style by yourself and you've been practicing it with some close friends, then when you get ready to converse, and I really want you to watch this training. It's my 34-minute training on how to get started, right? There's a way you get started, slow and easy. So if you've been practicing, you've been doing your affirmations, and you use what I'm advising you to do in that 34-minute training. I'll put a link to it. You really want to watch this. And you take your time, you pause before you start, you extend those first few words, and you get started. Then you want to use your presentation style. So think of a dial. Think of a dial. So your presentation style, you might inflect a lot, you might articulate more, you might have more profound facial expressions and so forth. So in conversation, that may be a little more than what you need, right? But what's better? Is it better for you to start out maybe a little more than what you need and then bring it down? Or is it better for you to stutter or get stuck and not be able to say anything? Well, you're going to have to answer that. I know what the answer is. It's better for you to start out this way and modify it as you go along. So if you have to, you start out in your presentation style and quickly modify it down. Now, what do I mean by modify it down? You turn the dial down some. You don't articulate as much, maybe. Or you don't inflect as high. You don't extend as much. Your facial expressions aren't as much. And notice I'm not saying you don't do these things. I say you don't do them as much. You don't use as many hand expressions, or they're not as dramatic, right? Maybe they're just kind of like this. Maybe you inflect like this. So you're using the same skills, just not as much, not as dramatic. It's still a more dramatic speaking style than what you used to do, but you have levels of it, if you will. There's the presentation level, There's maybe the meeting level. There's the conversation level. How do you figure this out? You just have to do it. You've got to get in there in the conversation, start out using your presentation style, and then train yourself how to modify it down. So some of you are not going to like that answer. Some of you are not going to be willing to get out there and do it. But what I'll tell you is that the clients who come in, either through the self-study, and I've seen, in fact, there's a client who wrote an article, 2 or 3 months. They wrote articles tracking their progress. I have other clients who are in the self-study as well as coaching clients who they come in and they do exactly this. They do exactly what I just shared with you. And I watch their styles change, and I see them improve their conversational style. It takes a little longer than presentations, but it does happen. And they have to make it happen. They have to get out and they have to remind themselves to use it. That's not easy, but you can do it. And the ones who do it, they see their conversations transform. For some people, it can take 3, 4, 5, 6 months. But what do I always say? The time's going to pass anyway. So why try this program, that program, start, stop? I've had people come to me and said, I have a 68-year-old lady, said, I wish I knew how to use the computer years ago. I could have found you, and I wouldn't be stuttering right now. I have people come to me who says, I wish I had done this a year ago. I was on your list a year ago and did this or did that. I have people go out, they try this program, say, it's not fast enough. They go out and they spend a buttload of money, and they end up, this didn't really work the way I thought. I wanted to do something fast. I'm not saying the program didn't work. They just wanted something fast, and they end up, many of them, coming back, working through the process, and within a relatively short period of time, transforming their speech. Okay? So I'm just telling you that to say, just get in there. In your conversations, use your presentation style, and then quickly, you can do it within seconds, a minute, modify it down. Okay? Just remember, how did I speak when I was presenting? Okay, I had a certain rhythm. I articulated. My breathing was, let me just use that same style and conversate, and just keep reminding yourself. It'll work. It'll work. Not going to be easy, but it'll work. All right. Now, the final one is to repeat steps 2 through 7. Right? Right. So let's run through the steps, and then we'll wrap it up. First one, pick a model. In the book, I talk about Demosthenes and his story. Read the book. Step 2, pattern yourself after your model. Step 3, prepare presentations, okay, to help you master your model's speaking style. Step 4, practice those presentations in private first. Step 5, present those presentations in public under pressure. Absolutely necessary. If you skip that step, then you're not going to get the results you want. Step 6, push yourself to use a modified version of your presentation style. Not going to be easy. You can do it. I see people do it all the time, so you can do it too.